Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi LIVENODING. In this episode, I'm gonna share with you this quick setup I did using Sverchok, basically to generate some kind of cross stitching pattern. This is actually quite a nice, interesting study if you want to have a look. And this is a simple one. The cross stitch is basically made of just two lines kind of crossing each other. Okay, in real life, the cross stitch actually normally you have some kind of fabric, and the fabric looks kind of pretty much like this. And if you are doing a cross stitch, um, you usually making some kind of like a cross stitching like this using threads, and depending on the pattern, the color also give kind of like making it into some kind of design. I have probably need to give an example, but anyhow, this is the quick one, and currently I'm using this noise pattern, kind of randomly generated. I can use standard Perlin or for noise or cell noise, and I'm using three different colors to do this. And yeah, actually I'll show you what happened. So basically we need some kind of grid, and this is like for a 2D cross stitching. Maybe at some point I can turn it into a 3D, but for 2D it's simpler because we just need to think about the grid. And from the grid here, what's actually happening is I'm using the adaptive polygon somewhere here. Where is it? I think it's somewhere here. So adaptive polygons node basically, and I'm using a plane, some kind of plane grids, 20 by 20. So we're gonna have like a 400 cross stitching, and with this 400 cross stitch, I generated random color based on the noise. That's why we get this kind of abstract looking pattern. That's actually cell noise, always looking a little bit strange, but one of my favorite. The normal one will be like standard Perlin, and we can kind of move it around, changing the noise. Okay, so let's go from the very beginning. Here I actually have, I started with a line, and with the line I have this UV connection connected to rotation and move. This is I'm doing it this way because at some point I can replace the line with some kind of multiple threads, and if you really like, you can perhaps use just a plain node and then replace the line with the U and the V lines of the plane, and then you're gonna get like a multiple lines. But anyhow, so I'm using this just a normal line, and I made two lines. For the second one, I actually rotated 90 degrees, and I didn't move it, but I just added there just in case. And so we actually have this kind of cross pattern, like this guy right here, like that. And then I will rotate it so it's more like a cross instead of plus. So I think I have it here. See, it's like a plus. I'm gonna hide it, and I actually just simply combine them together and then rotate it 45 degrees so we get this cross. And I'm using it as polyline viewer, but I also use it as a skin measure. This polyline viewer is probably somewhere. I actually probably hide it. So that's the actually, this is the curve version if you like. So you can use either the curve or this is a skin modifier version. So with the curve, it's looking something like this, and you can kind of overlap the curve like that, and it's kind of like a cross stitching, but a simple basic one. Like I said, if you want to make this like a little bit more elaborate, maybe the curve needs to be, maybe the cross stitch needs to be curvy a little bit. That's if you like to do it that way, but for now just keep it simple, and we're just gonna be using this skin modifier. So let's continue. So this one I can just hide it and then do not update. So I'm joining the mesh, cross stitch, and then for the cross, for each element of cross stitch, I'm duplicating it using adaptive polygon. So there's this plane, this is gonna be like some kind of template, and for every polygon face we're gonna replace it with a cross stitch. And once we've done that, we simply pipe it into skin mesher, and once we get the skin mesher, this become like a, you know, like a lot of objects. But all we need to do is just to give it a material that's understand object color. See, object color, and then bring it back into Sverchok using objects in MK3, and then we're gonna use object ID to set the color. The color setup is looking something like this. So I think there are two main operations here. Basically, adaptive polygons that simply instance all this cross stitch across the grid, and once we have that, we want to give some kind of colorations, and the colorations again based on the noise. So we have this plain template, and I'm using the center of each polygon plane, plug it into the vector noise, and I can control, actually I can control this abstract pattern in real time, randomize it, and based on that I'm kind of playing around with this idea, just using 3 value. Actually what happened here is I'm using this map range and change the map range from 0 to 1 to 0 to 3 and floor the value. This is kind of like a color quantization. So from the original noise, that's actually like a grayscale from white to black, so you get this grayscale pattern. I turn it into 3 colors, and I can adjust the 3 colors into any colors that I like. Any RGB color will work, so I can just make a quick changes, and you see the color is changing. So now we have a new pattern. So I just pipe in all these into color in, and this is going to be used for the color for each and every object. So the stitching will work, and if you have like a very detailed, maybe I will not go over 128 by 128 cross stitching, but it should work. And then if you are actually using the pixel art, this will work really well as well. But if you want to even like to use a 3D object and then give it some kind of color based on a vertex color, that's also possible. It just takes a little bit of tweak to do that. But I think this stitching looks quite okay from far away, even though yeah, it's the simpler version because they are kind of overlapping. If you have some kind of reference of cross-stitching art, maybe you can see how the cross-stitch kind of go over the holes of the canvas, and then it makes, I think it is quite nice. There are actually some example at a cross-stitching subreddit if you want to have a look. And I think I'll try to improve this setup and then maybe kind of incorporate the pixel art, so we can paint our little pixel art, and then Sverchok will convert it into cross stitching that looks like real cross stitching. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this live coding. Hopefully this is useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.